Okay, so hello everyone. This is Dr. Patrick Lockwood. I'm here on the Alchemy of the Mind podcast, and here is my co-host,
Sebastian.
Sebastian DeRosia. So I am a licensed clinical psychologist in Southern California.
My chair was already sinking.
And already there's a chair problem. That's okay. So we are going to get into some fun here, but just a little bit of our backgrounds before we really kind of start rambling about fun stuff. I am a licensed clinical psychologist in Southern California. I work in a drug rehab, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Cal Lutheran. And I do a number of videos on my own, and we're starting this podcast series because I think that what's been missing, and you'll probably be able to fill in a lot better here than I could ramble, is a real serious dialogue that's intellectually honest about kind of the current events. Most people are kind of rambling in fear, and we want to try and ramble less in fear. Mm-hmm. So why don't you kind of tell us about your background and how we complement each other?
My background, I worked in community mental health for several years and had an interest in plant medicines and psychedelics. And, I run the Seattle Psychedelic Society. And I've been watching that evolution of consciousness happen where, people are, one, like you said, the fear, getting to the origin of things is something I see a need for people right now.
Okay.
But anyways, that's a half introduction.
Yeah, I mean, there's just infinitely more about both of us, but I think as time goes by, the people that are watching will kind of learn as we kind of let things slip here and there.
Yeah.
So the thing that I think you and I have been talking about, because, we've known each other for a while now, and we chat about all sorts of here and now events that seem kind of problematic or good. And I think since there's a lot of bad in the world, maybe we could start with something good. And the thing you and I chatted about earlier was the fact that it seems like some celebrities are getting woke to the fact that this woke mentality about masculinity, is not working. So what did you showed me something. What did you show me again?
Recently so I know there was Cher, right?
Yeah,
one,
Cher.
and then recently it was Meryl Streep.
Right. I think Meryl Streep, what she did what was it? Was it a tweet or was it an interview?
I think it was an interview where she brought it up.
Right.
So something that was.
Yeah, something to the effect of like, here, let's just pull it up because it's easier if we have stuff right in front of us. So Meryl Streep, toxic masculinity. Let's see what shows up on the interwebs. The Guardian.
Picked up by the Guardian too.
Picked up by the Guardian. And
did you hear about New York Times?
No.
Recently, New York Times has said that they didn't want their staff interviewing with MSNBC or CNN. So it's kind of fascinating. Like New York Times is realizing that even though they're quite liberally biased, they're realizing that these they're saying those are too biased for them. And so, which is also maybe possibly a good sign.
That sounds like a great sign. I mean, so that's important.
Maybe they're going to be centrally biased.
And they're going to be centrally biased. Okay. Washington Post one day ago. Washington Examiner, excuse me. Meryl Streep understands toxic masculinity better than most feminists.
That's like a painful example.
Oh, that's scary. Oh boy.
Well, it's funny to see how they might bring it. It might be brought up in a more bipartisan way.
Yeah, probably.
Like she's a bad feminist now because she's calling out the.
That's insane. But that's insane. Here was the quote. What did she say? She said, "We hurt our boys by calling something toxic masculinity," she said. And I don't find that putting those two words together.
Oh, let's see, overgeneralizations and how much we're limiting people by overgeneralizing.
Right. Absolutely. And she said a very reasonable thing. She said, but there also are some damaging facets of culturally imposed masculinity that are toxic to men. So she took a kind of a common sense approach, it seemed like. And now the people
are they outraged?
and they're outraged. The Guardian's outraged, and I'm sure Vox is going to say something stupid.
So does it sound like is how the Guardian's reading? They're upset that she's breaking the echo chamber?
Yeah, what did she say? The title of the Guardian's article 10 hours ago said, "Seriously, Meryl Streep?" It's great. It's perfect. So, I mean, this is good.
It's got to get to some people, though. I think some people will. I think probably a majority of people that actually resonates with, because I mean, it's this small screeching minority of people that tend to, the outrage kids, or whatever you want to call them.
The outrage kids. That's true. That's true. I mean, even the polling data, I mean, that's a good word that I think we can coin, is that like it's the outrage kids, because they are children. They're acting like children.
Yeah.
This is not complicated. These ideas have nuance to them, and only children see ideas in very black and white, overly simplistic terms, right? So I think people like Meryl Streep are now making it kind of mainstream to have a nuanced understanding of masculinity. Heaven forbid.
What's interesting is to actually see celebrities speaking out, because I think there's probably a lot of celebrities that notice this, but they're too afraid to be put, have their heads put in the guillotine. Guillotine. I think I'd hope there's got to be more people that aren't just like, I mean, I think, again, like kind of we've talked previously about like the self-reinforcing culture, or like you said, closed system. I think a lot of times there's people that are just constantly reinforcing, but I can't think that like all of Hollywood is, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe this is the hope that Meryl Streep and Cher, I was trying to look up what Cher had said recently, but.
Did you find it?
I was trying to like not be on my phone while on the camera, but I'll find it. Let's see.
Oh, goodness, you darn millennials and your phones.
I'm not a millennial.
I'm kidding.
You're a millennial, actually.
I know.
I'm just out of the window, I believe, because I'm 1980.
Yeah.
Which makes me not a millennial.
Oh, God.
Nothing against millennials, but
I feel like millennial shamed right now. You're horrible.
Share. I'm trying to think of what tweets. I think she just brought up something about it was about sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
Which obviously, like, also hearing about the recent thing with the bubonic plague and your lovely home of LA.
The lovely world of LA.
Yeah. Share tweets on sanctuary cities, but ignores, let's see. Well, no, this is CNN. I really can't do that to people. I guess here's the bias news. That'd be a good little
bias news.
Be a good thing to share is the bias news, and then break down,
the biases.
We're learning as we go.
Yeah, totally.
Cher said, I understand helping struggling immigrants, but my city, Los Angeles, bubonic plague central, isn't taking care of its own. What about the 50,000 plus citizens who live on the streets, people who live below poverty line and hungry? If my state can't take care of its own, many are vets, how can it take care of more?
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people actually, 96,000 likes, 23,000 retweets. I don't know how much that correlates to to people who are, what I mean? Like, I don't know if that would, I don't know how much of, LA is on Twitter. You're on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter. I don't know why, but I am.
I don't know why you're on Twitter either.
Yeah, no, I should.
How's that going so far?
Twitter is an interesting little vehicle for making a mess, I've noticed. What's cool is, in my opinion, what I think is cool about Twitter, not that I want to necessarily advertise for it, is you have instantaneous access to people from every strata of society. So you can be a broke person, you can be a wealthy person, you can be straight or gay, you can be celebrity or not celebrity.
Woke.
You can be woke or not woke, and you can have fun. Literally, you can comment at anyone that you want to comment at. You can even talk to the president, which I'm sure that would be a fun conversation if we could have it. But that's the nice thing about Twitter. The bad thing about Twitter is there's a lot of animosity, and because it's text and visual based, you can't really. It's short, and you can't really. I'll tell you my experience. My experience is, I will make a joke or have a sarcastic comment, and some people will read it as serious, and because they don't know me or they don't know my views on things, they'll be
they're biased, right? Like how much their bias is shaping their perception.
Right, exactly. So because
which is a lot of Twitter.
That's most of Twitter. And the cool thing is that those of us with similar biases will end up hanging out with each other.
And that's kind of the tool that I think it functions as, I think as a business tool.
Yeah.
Is probably the good function of it.
Totally is. So, I mean, I'm grateful to be on there for the time that they'll have me on there until I get banned for saying something radical.
What is radical nowadays?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tell people they need to learn to code. I'm surprised Cher wasn't banned for her hate speech.
Yeah, it's so hateful that she wants a nuanced understanding of immigration.
So you don't get, there's not dislikes on Twitter, is there?
No, it's only do you like or not.
Did it used to have dislikes?
I don't think so. I think it's always been just do you like it or retweet it.
I hate how it's like they've taken the dislikes out of like Netflix, for example, which of course is like a super echo chamber.
Yeah.
But Netflix now doesn't have, like because it was that really lame comedian, the one that talks about her vagina. You know what I'm talking about?
Lame comedian who talks about her vagina.
Fat blonde. Amy. Something.
Oh, Amy Schumer.
Yeah.
Amy Schumer.
It's disgusting. So because her show on there got so thumbed down, they took away the thumbs down.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So now you can only see like a percent that a movie is a match. Because do you ever watch Netflix?
Yeah, occasionally.
Because Netflix is like the worst now it's just like pander. It's just heavy pandering, heavy like reinforcement of belief systems, right?
I see.
Now I feel like these people are like, especially with the liberal bias, right, are watching their media, then they're watching their shows on Netflix, and they're, I was watching the other day, The Society. I think I told you about this. It was like these high school kids who get left like to basically have the city to themselves.
Oh, okay.
And on the third episode, they're like, what are we going to do? Because all the men are going to start raping everyone. Yeah, and it's just like, and then the next episode, which I don't know why I tortured myself to go through watching another one, because I turned it off when I was like, oh, great, this is going to pander. They're literally pushing socialism, and they have these three guys laying there. They're like, yeah, well, it hasn't been done right before. And it's just like, oh, it was just so, it's just, they're just trying to push it down people's throats, trying to push these ways of thinking that they deem are the woke way to think.
The woke way to think. Wow. Yeah. Ugh.
Which means then if a person believes that, and then, the media, all these things and all these tech, are all reinforcing their belief, I think people stop questioning.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole problem with the fact that we're so simplistic. I think one of the things, and I scream about this all the time on my YouTube channel, we seriously overestimate our capacity to be thoughtful. We really, really do. Like, I love nothing more than the ability for us to have a mindful conversation, but man, we're so primitive that whatever we can do to either pander and or virtue signal to ourselves, to our tribe, we'll do it. Because that's how we're built. That's kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years. So we're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, now, and I think too, with like what I've said to you, like weaponized empathy.
Yeah.
Like now you see like those, and they're actually want that emotional response more so.
Yes.
Like reactionary emotional response. Because like I think some is good, obviously, but there's also too much when it's being, manipulated. Kind of basically, people are being manipulated.
How do we not manipulate it, though? I was having this conversation with one of my...
It's called programming, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that when you said that totally resonated with me, because it's true, right? Like we literally are creating a structure and teaching people a structure that automates how they work, right? That's so true. It's so true.
But I always wondered too, because kind of waking up to this reality, right? Like I wonder, has it just always been like this? And now it's something I've woke up to seeing at work because I'm woke. In quotes, air quote woke. But like, is it, or has it always been like that? Was like media, was it always reinforcing culture? I think it was, but I don't think it was to this degree.
Yeah.
Where it like becomes like propaganda and pandering. I feel like it was more subtle.
What time period though? Because I think that's where we have to start slicing and dicing.
Like what time period did that shift?
Yeah, because maybe there was a time in what?
I think since 2016. I think since.
Oh, okay.
I think really since the fear problem was like kicked into high gear.
You think? You think it's just that recent?
Because people, again, they clung to their ideology, their rigid tribalism, so they wanted to.
Huh.
I think more. No, I think it's always been doing it, but I feel like it upped the ante.
Oh, sure.
Like we're against this fascist and this, right? So we need to get the good word out. You know, we need to, I mean, they're just like they're like born again Christians.
They are.
You know, it feels like it's like evangelist religious folk.
Absolutely.
Running Airbnb.
Totally, and that's exactly what Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose from like the bogus hoax research studies. That's exactly what they say. They say that, this, postmodernist critical discourse analysis, whatever, it literally is a religion. Mm-hmm. And it's really kind of taking over. And it's funny that you see the kind of the Jordan Petersons of the world with their kind of Christian army going against the postmodernist kind of nihilist world and their army. And it's like there's this giant fight, Yeah.
Well, and it's like a moral, it's kind of a like, it's moral authority.
Yes.
At least coming from the postmodernists, I feel.
Well, I think people that are reacting very strongly on the opposite side also. Same thing. Yeah, I think they're really trying to maintain their moral authority as well. I think they're afraid of losing it.
Well, and how does one not do that, right? Like to me, I'm like, realizing that nature of both sides, or being able to step back and realize people are watching different screens, like they're involved in a different movie and they don't see it. And I think, I think the woke one is to be outside observing, but then is that another, I don't know, is that the same thing? And is
it a third tribe, right?
Yeah, or is that actually like looking at duality and kind of breaking down the illusion of duality of like the good and the bad side per se, and realizing that it's across the board.
I mean,
there's nuance.
Right. And I want to make sure that, at least in our conversation, nuance is the key or the goal. I just find myself wondering, to what degree can we really let go of, our egotistical sense of there must be this, or this, and really kind of step outside. Maybe that's where psychedelics, and you can probably speak to this much better than I could, but maybe that's where something like psychedelics could really help people get some objective clarity and dissolve the unhealthy ego. I don't know.
In some ways, I think in some ways, but in some ways, I also see people using and then reinforcing their own, reinforcing their ego or reinforcing their belief system. So I think a lot of it has to do with intention. And again, being able to it's kind of hard. I think it's hard for people, like having gone through that the past few years myself, is like breaking down how I perceived reality. Yeah. Realizing that, like, because I used to definitely, I thought I was on the good side, and then there's these other, those that I perceived as other, which I don't really perceive as the other, but I guess I have another other now. So
that's right.
That's the, the social justice, moral authority, authoritarians.
Yeah. And then what's the,
and I have a bias against them too, which is something interesting to watch, I think being conscious of bias, because we're biased creatures, right? Being aware of it to keep it in check, and hashtag not all, to always like keep that, let's speak in hashtags, but to keep that mindful of that, maybe.
I mean, that would be great. I just wonder about how, because like, what is it that Ben Shapiro says, I admit that I have a bias and I try and own that every time I do a story or whatever. The problem is, as much as I think we would like, or you and I, in our conversations we've discussed, we would like to be more unbiased. Yeah, I think even that in and of itself is a bias.
Well, so here's a question. So having a bias versus being wrapped in an ideology. Are we wrapped in an ideology? Can we not be wrapped in? Because I feel like being ideological is one thing, because then that's where the moral authority comes in. But then I don't know what's your thought on. Do you get what I'm saying there? Like if that's the difference, is being ideological?
I think ideology is everywhere in our discourse and in our belief systems. I think the problem that, you hear people like Sam Harris debate Jordan Peterson about, which they both agreed upon, is dogmatism. Because you can have an ideology, and that's fine. You can have 30 different sets of ideologies that allow you to construct a narrative about yourself, your world, and your values. And that's fine so long as none of them are dogmatic, which means you carry them out to the nth degree and even totalitarian and
like reinforcing them on others.
Yes, exactly. So dogmatism is a problem. Ideology is, I think, it's part of, this maybe logos of the world.
I mean, do we need it? Is it like, because it's like we need a belief system to navigate?
Right. I mean, we have a brain that's literally designed to make sense of things. Our left hemisphere, basically speaking, there's no real right-left divide that's particularly meaningful, but our left hemisphere is more interested in how do things line up in an orderly way. So we need things like ideology as kind of mnemonic devices for our intellect to make sense of things and structure the way we see the world, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of, again, maybe being conscious that one is, because I remember like in the 90s, right, where like the late 90s where the Christians were like wanting to ban everything from TV that was offensive, and and that was kind of the, and I was observing that at the time, and like it's weird to see now how that seems to, now they're counterculture, which is fucking hilarious. I think
yes.
Yes. Like conservative Christians are counterculture.
Yeah.
And then again, that might be, but that also might be our environments, like where we live, right? Like where both of our cities, Seattle and LA, where we live, that's counterculture here. But if you're in like the wilds of Nebraska, right? I don't know why I just chose Nebraska. My friend was over and he's from Nebraska. So wilds of Nebraska. But if you're there, right, does that, because it's a product of the environment, right?
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, where I grew up in, Missouri, southern Missouri, the Christian way of viewing and interacting with the world was absolutely the norm, comparatively speaking. So it would be no big deal there right now. I bet. I haven't been back in a minute, but when I go back this summer, I bet it would be no big deal to kind of keep that more conservative Christian ideology as a frame, and people will have no problem with it. Whereas here, like you're saying, on the West Coast.
And also, I guess, the media. If we go by within the media frame, Twitter, all these platforms, tech and media, it is counterculture there too, I would say. Oh, absolutely. And what was it? I saw a tweet, and I don't know what the article was, but there's a tweet that says that there's this giant gap between what the media reports as problems and the actual numbers that represent the problem. So like number of warnings about terrorists, et cetera, or gun violence, et cetera, is so overreported in the media just by the pure number of news stories compared to the number of actual incidents that occur. We just blow it way out of proportion because it's so scary sounding. Yeah. Or the media does. It gets people afraid. Yeah. Yep. We got to gin up that fear for people to be okay and make money. Your problem? Yeah, should I? No. Not. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there at some point. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like we are in a very interesting spot. And I think one of the things that's dramatically missing, which I like about Jordan, even though he doesn't do it very consistently, is we need to have more of the positive discourse about what's going on in the world, because everything seems to be just so bad. Like you and I started out with the intention of talking about how things are moving in the right direction. And you and I have just spent the last 20 minutes going down a rabbit hole of how this is bad and that's bad and philosophizing and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sinking. And he's sinking again. Sinking down to that level. Sinking to that level. Wow. Remaining positive. Yeah. Well, I don't think we can remain positive, but we should try. I think we should try this experience here. What I'm trying to think now of other potential. What good things are happening, right? Well, I know that Tim is, making an effort to do that with he's. Okay. I see some people making an effort, but it's funny though, because I think catching people's attention with positive stuff. Right. Is almost, so we got to talk about some of the shitty stuff too, because I think it draws on people. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's weird now. We're so. Imagine if the news was just would people even watch it? I mean, I've seen different where you can look up the good news source. Yeah. I don't think people get great. It's just like that people remember and they get caught up in the negative in life. Mm-hmm. Dwell on that, but they don't to dwell on the positive.
Right. I mean, I think we have spent so much time, and I would love to see a study on this because I think it'd be fascinating. I think if you were to watch mainstream news, all the major networks, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, da 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 da, and even in newspapers, I bet if you just did like a content analysis, just the number of minutes and the number of pages number of words devoted to bad stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
I'm sure it'd be massively overwhelming. 70-30, 80-20.
What? 70-30? I think it's probably more even.
It's probably more, yeah.
Like 90%.
That's so scary.
Well, and then that reinforces, because it's kind of like that self-reinforcing,
yeah.
You know.
Because it works. It
Yeah.
works.
Well, it gets clicks.
It gets lots of clicks. And I think that's where we can be different. I think we can try to have a fair and balanced perspective on the good things and the bad things that are happening.
Isn't that Fox?
It's Fox, dude.
Fair and balanced.
Fair and balanced.
Trigger somebody somewhere.
Yeah. There's someone scary over there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, if you look at it, really things are going well. Things really, like if you follow people like, if you ever get on Twitter, people like Steven Pinker and Jordan and all them, they post positive stuff, like things that are going well in the world. And that's why he wrote the book, Stephen wrote the book Enlightenment Now. You want to try and show that things really are moving in the right direction. More and more people out of poverty, clean water is happening all over the world. All sorts of good stuff is happening. We just don't hear about it.
Well, and that's a problem too, again, with the culture reinforcement, where like over, the election of Donald Trump, I watched people on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or, when I don't use Facebook anymore, but I watched, because it's a corrupt bullshit. But I watched people where if someone had a different view, or if they were pro-Trump, or if they they literally were cutting out anybody with a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course you have the media doing this too, like the sky is falling, which in a way, again, back to how, like, I don't know, like to realize people see who are deep in that, who view the world that way. Oh, that's like with the psychedelic society, right? I have so many people who are coming to the group who are really, it's the fear, they're really trying to, like, they have anxiety and fear. And then when I know they have this belief system reinforced by the media and by all this, and it's really, it's a really detrimental result in people.
It sounds like it. Yeah, no, I believe you. I'm sure it's very difficult for people to find any sense of relief, even with that's what's fascinating to me. That's why I'm stumbling. You're in this very positive society, the psychedelic society. It's an open-minded, exploratory world, and people are having the hardest time with things. But
the people who are doing the psychedelics are having a much benefit, though, and because I think it actually does. I think psychedelics help people see at least the bullshit, that it's like negative, and they realize, oh, if I'm focused on all this fear and this negativity, it creates, that's my world, my experience. I think psychedelics help in that way realize we are our thoughts.
Yeah.
So it helps kind of help with that, but then it's hard when you have that experience, which is so counter what the culture is saying. It's hard to separate the two.
Totally. It's very difficult. Yeah. I think we should have a whole talk about psychedelics, because I think that would be helpful. Because I think if we can talk more about the benefits, that would be great.
We could also discuss what's going on, what's new, and because it's a constantly evolving space right now, with like the decriminalization of psilocybin in Denver.
That's great.
And then Oakland's trying to decriminalize psychedelics in general.
I heard.
Which I just had someone reach out to me on the society to say, oh, like, is the society doing any of these things? Is anyone in Seattle? Which is weird, because all these other places are doing it and Seattle's not. But I think it's because Seattle's a little more of an introvert city. And it's also a city of like caffeine and weed. And because of the weather, it's a little more of an introvert, a little less social. I think, just like in LA, right? Like on YouTube, we see a lot of voices of dissent.
Yeah.
You do not see voices of dissent here in Seattle.
Interesting.
And I think it has to do with more of the culture. It's a more introverted culture rather than like, people are wanting to upset the status quo or whatever.
So do you think the society would benefit by trying to get a petition going to legalize
I told her, I said, if she wanted to take the lead on it, then that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
For me, I kind of would rather, like, I actually thought about doing one to focus on like 5G, because I think that's a bigger, like, detrimental threat right now. And like those things rolling out versus, like, you know, I get, but it's a psychedelic society, so maybe I should have like the 5G society to address those issues. Although I think it's all wrapped up in one package, you know.
Well, that's where I think we can have a skillful debate about what to do at what point, because, you know, in the world of like medical and psychology and therapy research, there's 3 levels of intervention. There's primary, secondary, and tertiary. So primary is prevention, basically, keeping bad things from happening. Secondary is at the early stage of illness, and tertiary is after the illness is basically taken over. So from a prevention standpoint, or a primary intervention, I would think maybe getting psychedelics legalized would help prevent more kind of corporatist takeover of things.
Oh, for sure. It's, I mean, I think it's, do you remember, what was the author of, do you remember Stealing Fire, the video I sent you, where he talked about how psychedelics working within the culture, kind of like I do think they could play a big role in shifting.
I think so. I think that would be helpful, because, you know, as much as my first instinct is always, well, drugs are not the go-to, at the same time, man, there's just this giant lack of intentionality and conscientiousness that's existing in our culture now. And maybe that would be a good way to jumpstart that.
Well, and then in a culture of consumption, right? Like we see now, I feel like we're at like peak consumption, you know, whether it's media, like we're at this peak consumption where if we are, at least if we're consuming something that shifts the way we think, maybe, and kind of breaks that reinforcement cycle.
And I think that's where the psychedelics will really benefit people. I think the problem is it's going to be easily commercialized. Like what I've seen with cannabis is just tragic, where it's a plant that could be used as a medicine. It can also be used for fun. It's built for both. And people, I mean, everyone and their brother is selling CBD. Everyone and their brother. I mean, I saw CBD supplements being sold at 24 Hour Fitness.
Oh yeah, they have been, like, Bed Bath and Beyond has CBD. They're even putting CBD into the essential oil diffuser, which is,
you know,
that's just marketing, because it's like, the amount of CBD you'd like inhale via,
it's not going to have an effect. No, they're just jacking the price. People's
placebo response. I mean, there was a study that came out years ago that they kind of speculated that the endocannabinoid system might regulate placebo. I'll have to send that to you, and if you look at it, it's pretty. And I could see that from, like, you know, when we had introduced the cannabis patches on the market, medical, when my company did, you'd have these people who were like heavy cannabis users, like dabbers, right? And they'd put on a 10 milligram slow release patch. Whoa. And I'm like, that's not doing anything.
That's not doing anything. No.
Doesn't do shit to me.
Yeah.
I don't have a very robust placebo response. I think I know too much.
Yeah.
Not
probably.
You know what I mean? I don't know if, like, more analytically minded people, are they less prone to, like, do they have less placebo response? Do you know if there's anything on that?
I'd have to look that up. I don't know. I haven't looked into placebo much.
Do you have much of a placebo response?
Personally, not that I'm aware of. No. Yeah. I've tried a number of supplements and things like that should have minimal effect, and they basically had none. So yeah.
Did you try CBD?
No, I haven't tried straight CBD. I've smoked a number of different cannabis strains over the course of my life, but
you should try. Some people respond really well. You need the CBD with the terpenes, with myrcene. To get action. CBD by itself doesn't do too much.
Yeah. Well, that's why all the research I've ever read on cannabis products is that it's the synergy of how the CB1 receptor is activated by THC, low density THC, with high density CBD products. And because the CBD system can not indirectly activate, it's not an agonist, it's what is the technical word for it? It binds to the side of the receptor and causes small changes to the CB1 receptor in terms of limiting how much this THC molecule affects the CB1 receptor. So because they work synergistically, you have more of a chance to have decreased efficacy of your THC molecule, which is why CBD can be helpful for many people when they smoke a lower THC content blend, from my understanding.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that I think once the chemists really get a handle on that, that will be phenomenal for people with anxiety issues, trauma.
And you're seeing that happen more and more. I think a lot of these, like the recreational companies here, there's definitely some really amazing innovation that's being seen in that, even in that area. Of course, it's going to be more subjective data, right?
Yeah.
Or objective, subjective, right?
Subjective.
Okay.
Well, and then the problem is because it's a highly fat-soluble molecule, you're going to have to deal with just wide variations in how people absorb it. You know, that's the problem with using topicals, THC, CBD products, etc. Is, you know, we're all built a little differently in terms of our metabolic properties.
Yeah, I'm always surprised how well people have, like when we launched like this topical compound, people loved it and swore by it. You know. But again, I wonder if it has to do with like, oh, you're using this taboo plant, right? And I think that's a big, you know, I also think people are used to taking something and not feeling anything, like a majority of people. So I think when they do actually take something with stuff with THC in it, and they feel something, I think even that placebo response and belief that something is working in their body could actually reinforce the effects of the plant.
That makes sense to me. I think that's the main problem is we just need more randomized controlled clinical trials. We need more control groups to go with this, or placebo groups, because I think once we start figuring out blends and, you know, how to produce, you know, a tablet, you know, something better than, you know, what we've had since the 80s, we're going to really help people. I think, you know, the pharmaceutical world can really help people, but man, I just see all sorts of charlatan kind of
just like marketing up the yin yang. So and there's two you're seeing, like, I mean, there's just so, like, the amount of waste produced here, not to go on, but another thing where it's like an industry around a plant, and, you know, everything here, like every, like, say a bag of edibles, every individual thing has to be packaged, like each candy. It's just, I can't imagine with the consumption, right, of these plants, how much waste is created. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, and, you know, I think that's the point where there's a thing we have to acknowledge, in my opinion, that it's a never-ending process. If we're going to consume, we're going to have to destroy. If we're going to if we're going to create benefit, we're also going to have to create harm in equal measure. And that's just life.
Being mindful of both.
You know, and being okay with the fact that in order for us to have a better life, other things in the world have to have a worse life. You know,
nature of duality in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. Super deep.
So deep.
So deep. So interesting. Okay.
We went deep.
We went so deep. Balls deep. And we've literally been all over the map too.
We have went all over the map. Maybe we'll get a little less ADD.
I don't think that's bad.
That'd be fun.
I don't think that's bad. I think people will enjoy that, or we'll see what the people say when they start watching it.
Yeah.
That'll be fun though. What else? What else do we want to cover? We talked about the masculinity thing. Talked about celebrities. What else?
I don't know.
What else? What other positive thing can we say? This is difficult. This is challenging.
What's a positive thing?
What positive good things are going on in the world?
Trying to think of like what I can recall. That's
what did I see? There was a news story about some bill passing the House for like LGBT rights or something like that. I don't know anything about it though. I don't know what that was.
Funny. Blonde, just, you know, Blonde.
Yeah.
Blonde from, she just did a video on fear.
Oh, did she really?
I haven't seen it yet. I was pulling up to like look at what I had reviewed previously. About to remember what what in all the mass of depressing bullshit was positive. Let's see. The Nevada governor, did you see that thing about the Nevada governor who, so basically right now they're trying to get rid of the electoral college.
Oh, that's right.
Now, the Democrats are trying to make it to where like they'll put whatever the popular vote is, or they'll put the electoral college towards the popular vote in their states. But I heard like the Nevada governor said they're not going to do it, and basically because they're recognizing that it's just gonna, it's going to reinforce. How am I trying to say this? It's not going to work like they think it's going to work. It's actually going to cause people to, like, say in a blue state like Washington, a blue state, people who normally wouldn't vote because they didn't feel like their voice would be heard, they're now going to vote because it could totally shift like what the electoral vote. So it could change the states from blue to red.
Interesting.
And maybe this isn't positive, but it's just what I randomly came across here.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I was in a little discussion with someone on Twitter about that. There's a third option, and I don't remember what it's called. Yeah.
Like if that's going to change, you mean?
No, there's a third option for how the electoral system could work, and I just don't remember the name of it.
Next time we're going to have notes on our
Next time we're going to have stuff prepared, so we're rambling just slightly less. I mean, I have some notes prepared, but it's all negative, so I'm just kind of tossing it to the side.
Josie Smollett case was unsealed, which I think is great.
That's positive.
Positive news.
Yeah.
Maybe some actual justice will, will prevail. Oh, I'm going to do the carnivore diet, which that's positive and cool.
Carnivore diet. So for those people who don't know about it, just explain it a little bit.
So the carnivore diet is just basically only meat.
Only meat.
Basically meat and water. No plants at all.
No plants.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
No plants.
So, Jordan Peterson's a huge fan of it for, mental health and physical health, autoimmune conditions. To me, a lot of people speculate that maybe it's just overall it's an elimination diet.
Yeah.
You're minimizing some. I mean, it's a very disciplined because you're only intaking 10 different things is what you're consuming. You'd love it. You should do it too. You like to eat the same thing over and over.
I do love to eat the same thing over and over. Can you eat like fish and shrimp and stuff like that?
Yeah, you can do fish. Yeah, you fish and sardines and
anything flesh, just no plants or fruits or anything.
Yeah, it's like totally the antithesis. I was telling my friend who's a vegan that we can hold hands in a picture because I'll be like the carnivore and the vegan.
You could be the yin and yang of things. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like people say once they've started on it, they'll go and when they do introduce something in, they can immediately tell how their body responds.
Wow. So
it's kind of interesting to think about minimizing the palate, right? So you're kind of so you have this more of a base of okay, here's what's, this. So the idea is that plants produce, not antigens, but they produce defense, so they won't be eaten. The plants where animals use flesh and teeth, right? So they don't produce something like that in their, in their meat. Yeah. So the idea is that you're minimizing all that out. But Michaela, Peterson's daughter had just amazing results with her autoimmune conditions. Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's fascinating. I've been able to do really disciplined, strict ketosis. Mm-hmm. So I think I can do it.
I'm sure you can do it. Yeah, for sure. And that's where I've always wondered about plants as living creatures on a similar level as humans and other animals in some way. Because there's even these stories about the mustard plant. I forget which kind. There's a different kind of mustard plant that literally we think feels some kind of pain or emits some kind of reactionary signal. Now, we're not sure how conscious or whatever the mustard plant is, but it actually emits some kind of signal if it's being attacked or being chewed on, etc.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So it'd be cool.
Well, that's the whole idea that we think that we're, that's why I like humanely, they find a difference in humanely raised meats and quality meats versus, which I'll be doing, happily killed animals.
Happily killed. Animals that got a nice hand job before they were murdered.
Yeah. They get fed beer and hand jobs, but gluten-free beer for the
gluten-free beer and hand jobs before their head gets cut off.
We went there. Bestiality and...
Why not? Why not? It's all about the positive, right? I mean, right, yeah. Animals should have sex too.
They should.
They deserve pleasure. Can't wait for the comments on that.
Yeah.
They talked about jerking off the cow. Okay.
But it was happy. I only eat meat from cows that have been given hand jobs.
That's right.
Part of my carnivore. It's part of my carnivore diet.
It's the loving carnivore diet.
Yes.
Specifically. It's a
carnivore lifestyle.
Carnivore lifestyle. Wow.
So.
It's a choice. You weren't born that way.
No. Not like Lady Gaga says it.
Oh, Lord. Okay. What else here?
I think we've covered defense. We've covered all the bases now.
We literally have covered everything. So for anyone who watches this, I want to say thank you for coming out to hear us ramble. Yes. And let us know.
My camera angle might be a little off. I don't know if I've been like looking down the whole time. But
looking down the whole time.
We'll do that first.
Love it.
We'll improve it.
Absolutely. Send us questions. Send us comments. Say we were crazy. And let us know what you'd like us to ramble about, because this is the Alchemy of the Mind podcast. Thanks so much to Sebastian for that name. And just before we go, what exactly is alchemy and how does it work?
Alchemy is a state of transmutation, the state of changing things from one state to another. I mean, I don't know if that's like the book definition, but to me, alchemy is like, we are in a state of alchemy. Part of this conversation is alchemy, which is like shifting views, shifting, bias perspective. Like I do alchemy when I'm working with plants or making jewelry. I mean, so I think that's bringing, it's part of the healing. I think part of bringing things from one state to another.
Right.
Which can always be, it doesn't always, we're focused on positive alchemy, but
can also be bad, right? Can also be negative.
That would be PAMP, which PAMP doesn't have the same as AMP,
PAMP. Pamper.
Positive alchemy of the mind. I just don't think that works.
No, I think alchemy is good. Yeah. So the goal of this podcast is for us to discuss topics, hopefully in a thoughtful way. We'll see how well that goes. And on mine, I don't know how thoughtful I'd be. And the goal would be to help people change in a thoughtful way with minimal interference of bias, to the extent that you and I can humanly own our bias, while having a little fun and being a little crazy at the exact same time.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
That sounds like a plan. Well, if you all watch this, whoever watched this, thank you for watching. Thanks for commenting. Please like, share, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. And you can find us on social media on Minds. What's your handle on Minds?
Oh, shit.
You got one?
Maybe we'll have an Alchemy of the Minds. Maybe we should
start an Alchemy. Okay, we'll start one. We'll start an AMP on Minds.
AMP on Minds.
We'll start an AMP on Minds. And again, have a good day. And thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.